This is Math 2, Unit 11 Review Worksheet Questions. You should have either printed this off of the website or picked up this worksheet previously from Clovis West. If you didn't do either, then you can either just handwrite them on a piece of paper or print it on your own now. Okay, I'm going to do numbers 4 and 5. It asked us to, what is the value of C that makes each trinomial a perfect square? If you remember the steps, that's where you take the middle number, cut it in half, and square it. Okay, what's negative 14 cut in half? Negative 7 squared is 49. That's it. That's your answer. Same thing here. You take the positive 5, cut it in half, and square it. Now 5 is not an even number, so we're not going to cut it in half as a decimal. We're going to leave it as a fraction and square it and get 25 over 4. Okay, next what I'm going to do is number 7. It says solve by completing the square, express answers in simplified radical form, and complex solutions in terms of I. Okay, so completing the square is the method they're asking us to use. That's where I move the 32 over. And you will have to remember like what's what, and that's where I also put plus blank. So just remember whenever they say complete the square, that's the plus blank. That's what the link you're making in your head. Complete the square plus blank. Cut the 12 in half and square it, you get 36. What you add to one side, you must add to the other. So this gives you a plus 6 times a plus 6. When you factor, if you look in your notes, those are the steps. Negative 32 plus 6 is 4, and I write this as quantity squared. That's the whole reason why we complete the square. Now what are they asking us? They're asking us to solve, and if I'm solving, that's where I square root both sides. Do not forget your plus minus. So that gives me a plus 6 equals plus or minus 2. I subtract the 6, negative 6 plus or minus 2, and since they are like terms, I don't leave my answer like this. I actually find the two solutions. Negative 6 plus 2 and negative 6 minus 2. Negative 6 plus 2 is negative 4, and negative 6 minus 2 is negative 8. Do not put parentheses. That's not an ordered pair. Those are your two answers for A. All right, the next one I'm going to do is number 9. Now, this one is a little trickier because remember when you're completing the square, you want the leading coefficient to be 1 and the middle term to be even. So number 8 is just going to be exactly like number 7. Leading coefficient's 1, your middle term is even. Same exact steps. This one and this one as well is going to be a little different because the leading coefficient is not 1. It is 2. So 10, you're going to do 10 on your own. It's going to be just like 9. What you still move the 24 over. 2n squared minus 12n equals negative 24, and I factor out not a GCF but just a 2. N squared minus 6n plus blank. Now it's been a while, but I did talk about this. Oh, it's been some time, but I did talk about it on a previous lesson, on the complete the square lesson, whatever lesson that was back on the videos. I did discuss this type of problem. Okay, so you take the negative 6, cut it in half, that's negative 3, square it, that is 9. And then you multiply 2 times 9 and you get 18. Now, the reason I'm showing you this way is because some people will just divide everything by 2, which technically you can. Now, if I was doing this on my own, that's what I would do. Divide everything by 2, then it's just like number 7 and 8. But I'm showing you the harder way because say that 24 was a 15 and it was not divisible by 2, then you couldn't divide everything by 2. So I'm trying to show you how to do it on every single one that will work every single time when it looks like this. Okay. So we're going to do 18 plus negative 24, and that gives me negative 6, and this is n minus 3, n minus 3. So 2n minus 3 squared equals negative 6. Divide both sides by 2. If you remember, we did these in a previous unit. I get n minus 3 equals negative 3, and this is quantity squared. And then I square root both sides to undo the exponent. They're inverse operations. They undo. N minus 3 equals plus or minus. The negative comes out as I. The 3 stays in. Add your 3 and you're done. N equals 3 plus or minus I root 3. Now, if you had divided everything by 2 to begin with and completed the square, you'd get the exact same answer. Okay, so I'm just showing you this way so that you know how to do them when you cannot divide everything by a number. All right, next one I'm going to do is 11. Solve using the quadratic formula by completing the boxes from the number choices. Okay, if you remember quadratic, I will write it right here. X equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Okay, so it will always give you these boxes like this on the test. You just need to know where to put your numbers. What I've always suggested is put your 4 and your 2 in first, because those are always going to be 4 and 2. Everything else just depends on what your A, B, and C are. Now, in order to do this, it has to equal 0. Oh, and it doesn't equal 0, so first thing I would have to do is subtract that 15 over. All right, I'm going to write it here. X squared minus 9x minus the 15 over, I'm sorry, got distracted, minus the 15 over, and that gives you plus 6 equals 0. Okay, so we subtract the 15 over. All right, so we have x squared minus 9x plus 6 equals 0. And then we fill everything in. X equals opposite of b. Oh, let me write down what a, b, and c are. A is 1, b is negative 9, and c is 6. Okay. Taking a look, we have x squared minus 9x plus 6. So x equals negative b, that would be negative 9 minus b squared, and b is negative 9, minus 4ac, a is 1, c is 6, and all over 2 times 1. Okay, and I believe there was a mistake here, so let me just check the box. Negative 9 is there, negative 9 is there, 1 is there, 6 is not there. That number should have been there. And it's not going to happen on the test where it's a mistake like this. All the numbers that you need to plug in here will be in the box. Okay. Solve for x in 11a. So we're just going to work this out. X equals opposite of negative 9 is positive 9, plus or minus the square root of 81. 4 times 1 times 6 is 24, and there's only one minus sign, and there's no negatives over here, all over 2. And then I just simplify that out now. I get 9 plus or minus the square root of 57 over 2. And I'm just going to double check my work, plugging things in. I'm going to break down the 57 over here just to see if any pairs come out. 57 divided by 3 is 19. Both 3 and 19 are prime, so no pairs come out. So this is my final answer. 9 plus or minus root 57 over 2. Okay. Moving on, I'm going to do some from other pages. I am going to talk about number 14, solve by the quadratic formula, and again it has to equal 0, so I am going to move things around. X squared minus 6x plus 14 equals 0. X squared minus the 6x, because I would have subtracted to the other side, I would have added the 14. I'll let you guys finish after we write this down. A is 1, B is negative 6, C is 14. Okay, Moving on, solve each equation for x using any method, express answers in simplified radical form. Okay. Let's take a look. When you have only two terms, like these two here, when you have only two terms, here you have 3, here you have multiple terms, here there's only 2. When you have only 2 terms, it's going to be in this particular unit. When you get to higher level math classes, it's not the same. In this particular unit, if you have only 2 terms, it's going to be a factoring problem. A factoring or solving, and I'll explain what that means. Here, let's do this one first. Factor. What kind of factoring is this? It's a GCF. And that's how we're going to solve using a GCF. What is your GCF? 3a. 3a times a is 3a squared minus 5, because 3a times negative 5 is negative 15a. And then we use the zero product property and solve. Divide both sides by 3. A equals 0. Add 5 to both sides. A equals 5. You get 2 solutions, 0 and 5. Okay, this one, you do have 2 choices. You could factor, just like we did this one, by difference of 2 squares, or you could just solve it the way we did in our previous units, where you add the 121 to the other side and square root both sides. X equals plus or minus, square root of 121 is 11. X equals plus or minus 11. All right, these over here, what do I do? First thing I'm going to do is get it equal to 0 and then decide. So I'm going to subtract the 3x, and when I do that, because it doesn't have a like term, I'm just going to write it over there. But I do want to write it in order. Where would the 3x go? The beginning, the middle, or the end? I'm hoping you realized it goes in the middle, so it would look like this. Okay, so this is where you'd have to decide, are you going to factor, complete the square, or quadratic formula? Now the order in which I set that is the order in which I like to work it out. Your choice. You can do it either way. Any of those 3 ways. Okay, first thing that I notice is that is a 3. So I would not want to complete the square. So I'm either going to factor or quadratic formula. I know the factors of 1 or 1 and 1, so there's no way that's going to factor. Because if 1's plus and 1's minus, and the only way to get 1 is 1 and 1, there's no way that's ever going to equal negative 3. So this is not factorable. I don't want to complete the square. I could, but I don't want to because that's not even. So you're left to use quadratic formula. All right, I'll let you finish that on your own. Remember, quadratic formula is the one we wrote right here. And we already did some of those together. I did that one and started off that one. Okay, so A is 1, B is negative 3, and C is negative 1. A is 1, B is negative 3, and C is negative 1. I would suggest you use the quadratic formula rather than complete the square. All right, next one, I'm going to add the 6. Now on this one, it does have a like term. What is its like term? Correct, it's the negative 39. So that gives me b squared plus 8b minus 33. Okay, now I see that this middle number is even, so if I wanted to, I could go straight to completing the square because that's even and that's 1. But thinking of factoring, the only factors of 33 are 1 and 33, or 3 and 11, and there's no way for me to work those out with one sign being plus and one sign being minus to give me an 8 in the middle. So I am not going to factor. I tried, but I couldn't. It wasn't factorable. So technically, this is your choice. If you wanted to, you could complete the square or quadratic formula. Quadratic formula is my last choice, but some kids like it because it works every time. You don't have to worry if it factors. You don't have to worry about what's 1 and what's even. It works every time. So some kids would go straight to this just every single time. For me, I saved it as a last resort. I'd rather factor or complete the square first. Now we already said it, you can complete the square because that's 1 and that's even. So that's the method I'm going to use here. I'm going to add 33, b squared plus 8b remember, complete the square is the plus blank process, equals 33 plus 0 is positive 33 plus blank. Take the 8, cut in half, and square it. You get 16, and you add 16 to both sides. Okay, and I am going to double bubble. That's b plus 4 quantity squared equals 33 plus 16 is 49. And I did mess up, and I apologize. I don't know why I read that as a 33. It is a 39. So I was going to change some of my work. Oh, no. It was a 33. I apologize. My mistake. Okay. So we are going to go through and square root both sides, and I'm going to let you guys finish from there. I do want to go back to one thing I did say earlier. 39, I don't know why I keep using that. 33, the only factors of 33 I said were 1 and 33, or 3 and 11. And earlier I said there's no way to use those to get the 8, and I apologize, there is. You could use the 3 and 11. So if you wanted to, you could have factored this first. Now, I was going too fast when I was talking and just blah, 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 because I wanted to complete the square. Technically, if I had recognized that I could factor, I would have personally factored first. I like to factor before completing the square. So if I had to do this one over, I would have just gone straight to factoring. But I've gone this far, so if it was me and I was doing this, I would just finish it off from here. But no, if you want to go back and restart it, you could just factor. All right, I'm going to let you guys finish that one. Okay, jumping down to the next section, I'm going to work out number 20. Number 20 is not a double distribution. It's distribute the 4, distribute the -2, and combine like terms. Okay, so what does that give me? 8 plus 32i minus 24 plus 6i. All right, and then you combine like terms. 8 and -24, you combine like terms. 8 and -24 is -16, and 32 and 6 is 38. So -16 plus 38i. And that there is your final answer. All right, next one. You multiply -5 times 4 times 7 times 2 times 3. So go ahead and do that now. I end up with 840. I'm going to plug that in. Oh, -840. I'm going to plug that in. I haven't worked out my i's yet. I'm going to do that one more time. 5 times 4 times 7 times 2 times 3 equals 840. I raised to the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6th power. Because that has a power of 2, it's raised to the 6th power. Okay, and when you add your exponents, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, I to the first, I to the second, I to the third, I to the fourth. Remember the chant, I won, with the negative sandwiched in the middle. You chant, I won, negative sandwiched in the middle. 6th power is larger than 4, so we're just going to count through. 1st power, 2nd power, 3rd power, 4th power, 5th power, 6th power, because it just continues with this pattern. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, and it just continues over and over and over with this pattern. So I to the 6 is -1, so you have negative 840 times -1, so you have positive 840 as your final answer. Okay, next one. Because there is no sign in between the two parentheses, this one is a double distribution. So you do 2 times 5 is 10. 2 times -i is -2i. And then you go and distribute the -3i. -3i and 5 is -15i. And -3i and -i is positive 3i squared. Okay, So middle terms are like terms. 10, and I have -2 and -15, that's -17i. Now here, remember, I squared is -1. I squared is -1. So you have 3 times -1 because I squared is -1. So 3 times -1 is -3. So that plus 3i squared becomes -3. Because I squared is -1, positive 3i squared becomes -3. And then you have like terms again. So you have 7 minus 17i. All right, next what I'm going to do is 25. Write it twice and double distribute. I'll let you guys finish from there. I just want to remind you, you do not distribute the exponents. It's not 49 plus 4i squared. You have to double distribute. And when you double distribute, the middle terms are not opposites. You will combine them. Your middle terms should come up to be 28i once you work it all out. And then you have your first term, your last term. It's very similar to this one over here. You guys can finish that one on your own. I am going to move on. I want to talk about number 27. Okay, because this one is multiple choice, we can do some elimination. For example, this parabola is positive, which means it's an upward parabola because it's positive x squared. So I can eliminate part B or answer B because that parabola is opening down. Okay, y equals -x minus 2. Remember, a negative slope goes downhill like that. That line is a negative slope. So I can cross that one out because that has a slope of 0. I can cross that one out because that has a positive slope. So the only answer I have left is D. So select the graph with the correct selection for f of x equals g of x. Remember, that's where two graphs intersect. So the parabola and the line, it's this picture here. All right, 28 and 29. Same concept. Select the correct solutions for f of x equals g of x. F of x is the line, g of x is the parabola. Now if you look, this line is never going to intersect with that parabola. And when two functions are equal, you're looking for the point of intersection. Since they never cross or never intersect, there are no solutions. For f of x equals g of x. No solution because they never cross each other. Here they cross twice, there and there. So I know it's not no solution. And what are my two values? This one right here has a x value of 5. And this one here has an x value of 0. 0, 5. So 0, 5 is the solution. And I can tell there's two of them. So A and B are distractors. It's not 0 only or 5 only, it's 0 and 5. And I can see that just by looking that there's two solutions. Okay, 30. I added these lines in there because those questions, the y-intercept question will be on the test. So I just wanted to put it in. It wasn't on the worksheet to begin with, but I did add it in. I want you to do the same. Okay. Graph the following parabola written in standard form and determine the key features. Okay. Now, take a look. Over here, what are they asking for? Vertex, axis of symmetry, x-intercepts, y-intercepts. Okay, it's written in standard form. Nowhere does it say write it in vertex form. Do you see that? Nowhere does it say write it in vertex form. If it did ask us to write it in vertex form, I would have to complete the square. Okay, if it did say write it in vertex form, I would have to complete the square. So let's look down here at 32 and 33. Determine the equivalent equation in vertex form. So whenever they say, hey, write an equation in vertex form, that is when I will complete the square. So down here I'm going to do that. But since it didn't ask that here, I don't have to complete the square. I can use the shortcut. And if you remember the shortcut, it was x equals negative b over 2a and then plug it in. X equals negative b over 2a and then plug it in. A is 2, b is negative 12. So x equals opposite of b, opposite of negative 12 over 2 times 2. So 12 over 4 equals 3. So x equals 3. And then you take it and you plug it in. So your vertex is going to be 3 because that's the x value we just got. And then the y value you find by plugging in, which is something we have done before. 2 blank squared minus 12 blank plus 10. Hit pause, plug it in. Actually, do this first. Plug in the 3, plug in the 3. 3 squared times 2 minus 36 plus 10. Work it all out and then hit play. Okay, you should have ended up with y equals negative 8. Once you did 2 times 9 minus 36 plus 10. I'll let you finish it on your own. You should end up with 3 comma negative 8. Axis of symmetry is always your x value of your vertex. And that makes sense because this formula here is for your axis of symmetry. Okay, x-intercepts, you make the equation equal to 0. Now I'm running out of room, so I'm going to do that on a separate piece of paper. Zero equals 2x squared minus 12x plus 10. Now, it's totally up to you on how you do this. Because it equals 0, I'm solving. Can I factor? Can I complete the square? Or do I not want to worry about any of that and go straight to quadratic formula? That is up to you. If you want to go straight to quadratic formula, go straight to quadratic formula. If you want to try to factor or complete the square, you can do that as well. Now, I will tell you this. Only because it equals 0, you can divide everything by 2. Now, that's just a suggestion. It's not a requirement. But if it equals 0 and everything has a common factor, then divide it out and get rid of it. 0 equals x squared minus 6x plus 5. Now, you didn't have to do that. You could have left it like that up here and did your quadratic formula. Or take out a 2 and then factor, or take out a 2 and then complete the square. Your choice. Or move the 10 first, sorry. All right, I can tell that I can factor this. And maybe I cannot. Let's see. This is a tricky one because sometimes the 5s are a little tricky. 1 and 5. Now, I actually can because I can do minus 5 minus 1, negative 5x, negative 1x, and that gives me the negative 6x in the middle. So I use the zero product property. And I get 5 and 1. So my x-intercepts are 5, 0, and 1, 0. Okay, now, again, if you didn't divide the 2 and you left it like this, 0 equals 2x squared minus 12x plus 10, you could have taken it out, 2x squared minus 6x plus 5, and then double bubbled. And you would still end up with the same answers. That 2 by itself cannot equal 0 because it has no variables, so zero product property, you still get 5 and 1. Or you could have subtracted the 10 over, taken the 2 out, and complete the square. If you would rather have done that, negative 6 cut in half is negative 3. Negative 3 squared is 9. 2 times 9 is 18. And then worked it out from there. Your choice. This would be 8 x minus 3 squared, divide the 2, square root both sides, blah, blah, blah. Your choice. Now, in all of this, if you had wanted to, you could have used the original. A is 2, B is negative 12, C is 10, and done the quadratic formula. In the end, regardless of which method you choose, you would have ended up with this as your answer. Okay, y-intercept. How do you find the y-intercept? You make x equals 0. And remember, standard form is the nicest one to do that in. Y equals 0 minus 0 plus 10. Can you see how easy that's going to be? because you plug 0 squared times 0 is, 0 squared times 2 is 0. 12 times 0 is 0 plus 10. So y equals 10 is your y-intercept. So that's 0, 10. And you graph. All right, I'm going to let you graph. I'm going to grab that phone call really quick, and then I will finish. All right, sorry about that. My kids are wondering what's taking me so long. Okay, so you can graph 3, negative 8. Now, because I don't have any numbers, as long as you label everything, this is 3, negative 8. My intercepts are 1 and 5, and my thing up here is going to intersect. I know it didn't do a good job at graphing it, but it will eventually cross the y-axis at 10. Okay. I'm going to jump down to the bottom. Now, I said earlier, because it says write in vertex form, you will have to complete the square. I'm going to do this one first. Complete the square. What do? You move over the 10. That is not a 0, so I'm going to have to leave that there. The only thing I'm going to do is change it to a y. Minus 10 equals x squared minus 12x plus blank, since there's no number there to take out, plus blank. Negative 12 cut in half is negative 6. Squared is 36. And I add it to the other side. That gives me y plus 26 equals double bubble. Same sign, 6 and 6, so x minus 6 quantity squared. Now, I'm not solving, I'm rewriting. So since I'm not solving, I'm not going to square root both sides. This is where I minus the 26 to get the y by itself so that I have it in vertex form. Y equals x minus 6 quantity squared minus 26. And that there is your answer. Now, if you left it as y, I would be perfectly fine. If you changed it back to the f of x, that's fine as well. All right, next one. Since this one does not equal 0, I cannot divide everything by 8. So, remember earlier when I said, I'm showing you the harder way because so that when you get to the harder ones, you know how to do it. So this would be a harder one where you're forced to do it the harder way. There's no other way around it. Okay, so I'm going to add the 22 first because that step is always the same. And then I'm going to factor out just the 8 because I cannot complete the square with that leading coefficient being any other number than 1. So take out the 8, x squared minus 2x plus blank. 2 cut in half squared is 1. But you have a coefficient out here that you have to multiply in. 8 times 1 is 8. So that gives you y plus 30 equals 8x minus 1 quantity squared once you factor all of that out. And then you subtract the 30 over. Y equals 8x minus 1 quantity squared minus the 30. Again, this is because I'm rewriting it, not solving. I'm rewriting in vertex form. So f of x equals 8 times the quantity of x plus 1 squared minus 30. Okay, I'm going to move on. Okay, 34, 35, 36, 37. So the whole back page I do want to talk about. For now, I'm actually going to have you cross out 34 and 35. Do not worry about them. Okay, just do not worry about them. No, you will not need to worry about it for the test. And if you do, then I'll show it to you when we get back. Okay, 36. A firework is launched from a platform that is 8 feet high. It is set to explode as it reaches maximum height. The height of the firework h can be modeled by this function, where t is the number of seconds after launch. Question A. How long does it take to reach the max height? Question B, what is the max height? Okay, so we know we have this parabola. It has an initial height because it said that the rocket was launched with an initial height, goes up, comes down. Now, would you agree that point right there is the maximum? We don't know what that vertex is, but we know it's the maximum, correct? Okay, so when they're asking what is the max height and how long does it take to reach that max height and how long does it take, they're asking for your x and y value of your vertex. So in all of this, what they're asking you is find the vertex. They're pretty much telling you to find the vertex. Now, I said it on a previous problem. If they do not ask for vertex form, there's a shortcut. I'm going to repeat that. If they did ask for vertex form, you would have to do all of this, complete the square work. If they don't ask for vertex form and they ask for just the vertex, you can use this shortcut. Okay, that's going to be something you'll need to know on your take-home quiz number 2. So keep that in mind. If they're asking for just the vertex, you can use the shortcut, negative b over 2a. In this particular problem, a is negative 16, b is 160. And so I have opposite of b, which is 160, over 2 times a, which is negative 16. Negative 160 over negative 32. Plug that in your calculator, and you end up with 5. So x equals 5. And then you plug it in. All right, that's something we've done before. We've been doing that since our previous unit. Find the x value, plug it in. And we plug it into that original. H equals negative 16, 5 squared, plus 160 times 5 plus 10. Again, I'm using the original function and plugging in 5, because I got it there, for all of my x's. Hit pause, work it all out. I'll start you off. Negative 16 times 25, work that out. Plus 160 times 5 is 800, plus 10. Okay, once you work it all out, you should end up with 410 feet. All right, what is what? The x-axis is your time. Your y-axis is your height. So what does 5 represent? What does 410 represent? 410 is the maximum height. It has a max height of 410. What does the 5 represent? The amount of time. It takes 5 seconds to reach a max height of 410. We're ready to answer our questions. How long does it take to reach its max height? Is that the 5 or the 410? How long does it take? That would be the 5. 5 seconds. What is the max height? Is that the 5 or the 410? It's the 410, 410 feet. So, negative b over 2a, plug it in, get your vertex, know which one's which, and then label your answers. 5 seconds, 410 feet. All right, and we are also going to cross out 37. Okay, so 36 was the only one we ended up with on the back page, and I did all of that one with you. Okay, that is it for this session of homework questions.